Maphefo, very good morning to you, and thank you very much. From a skills perspective, one would argue that the transport sector in general has not really been ready for a pandemic like this, if you take things like social distancing into account.
In fact, if one looks at the transport sector the way it is, it requires volumes in order for profit to be made. So social distancing, in a way, impacts it directly. If you look at the aviation sector, the plane has to be full to travel a long distance. Now, with social distancing protocols, what that would mean is that a plane would then have to fly with half the number or even maybe a third of the number that is usually expected. Likewise, in the taxi industry, likewise in the bus industry, in fact, even in the cruise ships, all forms of transport are impacted by this COVID-19.
And it's all been negative, really. And one wonders, how can the transport sector, what kind of skills would they need now going forward in order to sustain themselves?
What COVID-19 has done, it has really disrupted us into the digital age and into the computer of things. So I believe that different subsectors are at different levels of readiness with regards to some form of digitization. If one looks at the aviation sector, the skills that they would need, they would need obviously to use less people interface and use more computer things. So that if you look at the airport and you look at the aviation sector, I believe they were almost ready for this COVID, because when you get to the airport, you don't always have to engage with if you are checking in, you can check in by yourself. The only time is when you're getting into the plane, they need to go through your documentation to confirm that you are the client or the passenger that is getting into the plane. But the aviation industry, compared to the other sectors, aviation, maritime, being the cruise ships, they are ready for this. To a large extent, the train industry, if one looks at how train, they are to a large extent and can to a large extent use digital apps and use devices to get people into the train.
But your metros, your metro train, your metro rail, I mean, we know they transport thousands and thousands of commuters across the length and breadth of the country going to work every day. I don't think they are ready, judging by the numbers, the volumes they were carrying before.
It will take them a while, but I do believe that because the devices and the systems are in place, though it might take them a while to get to a level of the aviation sector and the how train of this world, they can get to a stage. It might just require they do more trains and more trips than they currently do.
Yeah, and the taxi industry, I mean, currently they are fighting for survival. They're demanding more money from government. They're about to increase fares as well. And they're complaining about transporting 7 or 10 passengers, not full capacity. So there are lots of challenges for such road transport. But you, as TETA, I understand, recently you had a partnership to provide entrepreneurship and in terms of statutory compliance online program for small business operators. I mean, many taxi people would belong to that kind of sector. Just very briefly, at a high level, what is this course about? What are you helping them do?
What we did when COVID-19 came onto the stage, we realized we needed to find ways in which we can get them to comply, first with the protocols that are in place, usage of masks, but we also then realized they need to find ways in which they can comply with the rules of transportation, but also with COVID-19 rules. So what we did, we had a program with the small bus operators to get them to work online. Usually, our training programs are done on a contact basis. But because of COVID-19 and because we didn't want to lose the program, we then went onto a virtual learning platform, and most of them are going through a virtual learning platform. Over and above that small bus operators program that we are running, we have now identified that transport is demand-driven, and the demand now is the demand of transportation of essential goods and the demand of food items, and the things that are demanded to be transported now are almost everything to do with COVID-19. So what we have come up with is a program called an economic stimulus program, where we now taking advantage of the e-commerce platform and the fact that people are now ordering online instead of going to the shops directly, and we engaging with the big e-commerce platforms like Takealot to run a program with a small transport operators.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds like good initiative there. We wish you well. That's the Chief Executive Officer of the Transport Education Training Authority, TETA. That's Ms. Maphefo Anno-Frempong.